Most people will never build real wealth from investing, not because the market is unfair, not because they started too late, not because they did not have enough capital, because they never had a framework. Welcome to the ProfitByFriday.com podcast, where we replace guessing with process, emotion with discipline, and noise with one clear idea every single week. Now, let us get into it. Someone on Reddit asked a question last week that stopped me. How do you actually research a stock? Not which stock to buy. Not what the market is doing, just the fundamental question that every serious investor eventually has to answer for themselves. How do you actually do the work? It is the right question, and the honest answer is that most people never develop a real process. They read an article, they watch a video, they check a price chart, they ask someone in a forum, and then they make a decision based on a collection of inputs that were never designed to work together. That is not research. That is noise management. Real research starts with a framework, a repeatable process that asks the same questions in the same order every single time, regardless of which company you are looking at. A process that removes emotion from the equation and replaces it with structure. At Profit by Friday, we use a framework called CLEAR. 5 letters, 5 pillars. Every stock we look at goes through all 5 before we form a view. C is for catalyst, the specific driver. Why this stock? Why now? We are looking for a named event, contract, product launch, or structural shift that is generating revenue today. Not a hope, not a theme, a specific reason this business is moving in the right direction at this moment. L is for leadership, not the CEO, the business position. Is this company the leader in its sector or a laggard? We look at market share, pricing power, and competitive position versus peers. Leaders compound, laggards erode. E is for earnings, growth quality, acceleration, and sustainability. We look at EPS trajectory, revenue acceleration, and margin expansion, and we look at the direction of growth, not just the number. A company decelerating from 40% EPS growth to 25% is telling you something. You need to listen. A is for accumulation. This is the Wyckoff lens. Are the right people building positions in this stock quietly? We look at volume on up weeks versus down weeks, institutional ownership trends, and float dynamics. Genuine accumulation means smart money is moving in before the crowd notices. R is for risk and reward, entry timing, momentum confirmation, and structure. We look at whether the chart has a defined entry point, a logical stop, and a measured target. The best business in the world is a bad trade if the risk to reward is not in your favor. That is the CLEAR framework. 5 pillars, every stock, every time. Now here is what you need to understand before you use it. The scoring is subjective. There is no algorithm that tells you what to buy. 2 investors can run the same company through CLEAR and arrive at different conclusions based on their reading of the evidence. That is not a weakness. That is the point. What CLEAR gives you is not an answer. It gives you a structure, a consistent set of questions that forces you to think about the right things in the right order before you form a view. And the scoring gets better with experience. The first time you run a company through CLEAR, you will feel uncertain. The 10th will feel different from the first. The 50th different from the 10th. You are building pattern recognition, training yourself to see what strong accumulation looks like versus weak, what a real catalyst looks like versus a story, what genuine earnings quality looks like versus managed numbers. The framework is the starting point. Experience is what sharpens it, and consistency applied over time is the only edge that actually lasts. But here is what I want you to understand about research that nobody tells you when you are starting out. The goal of research is not to find the perfect stock. The goal of research is to eliminate the wrong ones. Most of the work in the CLEAR process is not building conviction. It is removing candidates that do not deserve your capital. A company with no identifiable catalyst gets eliminated. A company with decelerating earnings gets flagged. A company with no accumulation signal gets deprioritized. A chart with no defined entry and no logical stop gets passed over regardless of how good the fundamentals look. What you are left with after running 100 companies through CLEAR is a small list that deserves deeper attention. That is when the real research begins. The earnings transcripts, the industry analysis, the comparison against competitors, the conversation with the chart. But you cannot get to that stage without a process that filters the noise first. Here is something else nobody tells you. Research is not about reading everything about a company. It is about asking the right questions in the right order and being honest about what the answers tell you. Most investors do the opposite. They fall in love with a company first, then they research to confirm what they already believe. They look for evidence that supports the decision they have already made and ignore the evidence that contradicts it. That is not research. That is rationalization. The clear framework forces you to ask hard questions before you form a view, not after. The catalyst question is asked before you check the price. The earnings question is asked before you read the bullish analyst reports. The accumulation question is asked before you calculate the upside. The risk and reward question is asked last because it only matters if the first 4 pillars pass. Because the sequence matters. If you fall in love with the story first, no framework in the world will save you from a bad decision. The more companies you run through clear, the faster and sharper the process becomes. What takes an hour today takes 20 minutes in 6 months. What feels uncertain today becomes instinctive with repetition. The framework does not change. You change. And as you change, the quality of what you see inside a business changes with you. That is the compounding that nobody talks about when they talk about investing. It is not just the portfolio that compounds. It is the investor. Run every stock through those 5 pillars before you form a view. Catalyst, leadership, earnings, accumulation, risk, and reward. You will make fewer decisions, and the decisions you make will be better. That is how we research a stock at Profit by Friday, and it starts with the same 5 questions every single time. Amateurs research to confirm. Investors research to eliminate. Visit ProfitByFriday.com today. Subscribe free to the Friday Flash, where you will receive 1 stock fully evaluated through the Clear framework every Friday so that you know everything about the company before you decide to invest. No noise, no hype, just the analysis that matters. We trade for cash flow. We invest boring to build legacy. See you in the next episode. Bye for now.